Reports began to reach the Galactic Empire's Central Command detailing unusual movements in the depths of space. Uneasy whispers spread of a fleet armed by humans, an insignificant species the Empire had encountered before. Their ships and technology were considered laughably primitive. The Imperial intelligence officer analyzing these reports spoke with disdain, barely hiding his contempt. To him, the idea that humans could pose anything greater than a minor nuisance was absurd. Officers compiled the data and sent it, along with a cursory summary, up the chain of command. The higher-ups, steeped in arrogance, were even less concerned. After all, the Empire had crushed far more advanced civilizations in the past. Humans had barely left their planetary cradle the last time anyone had bothered to check. Their clumsy ships, armed with rudimentary weapons, were no match for an Imperial cruiser. The idea of humanity as a threat was openly mocked within the opulent halls of the Empire's command. The very notion of human progress was ridiculed by the Empire's highest leaders. Discussing these reports with haughty smiles, they dismissed concerns as distractions from more pressing matters, such as territorial disputes or their own personal ambitions. However, a few voices expressed unease, recalling the stubbornness of the human spirit in previous encounters. Despite their inferior numbers and technology, humans had always refused to surrender completely. These concerns were swiftly silenced with ridicule. How could such a backward species ever pose a threat? The official stance was clear. Humanity's fleet, whatever it was, would be crushed swiftly and decisively. The Empire's leaders scoffed at the idea of deploying their elite forces for such a trivial task. Instead, they allocated only the resources necessary to make a show of force, confident that even a fraction of their power would suffice. The operation was treated as a formality, an opportunity to remind the galaxy of the Empire's dominance. Preparations began, but they were half-hearted at best. A moderate-strength fleet was sent, deemed more than adequate to handle the insignificant threat. This was not a war in their eyes. It was a routine operation. Overconfidence permeated the ranks, and victory was considered inevitable. The Empire's propaganda machines assured the population of a swift and glorious triumph. This conflict would be a mere footnote in history, a minor skirmish hardly worth remembering. As the Empire's fleet moved forward, exuding arrogance, subtle changes in the incoming reports went unnoticed. They overlooked growing indications that humanity's fleet was unlike anything seen before. Blinded by their own hubris, the Empire ignored the significant details suggesting that humanity had adapted, learned, and even thrived since their last encounter. When the Imperial fleet finally encountered the human forces, the initial impressions confirmed their biases. The human ships appeared old and battered, their hulls scarred, and their designs crude. Scans revealed no advanced technology. Imperial officers dismissed the fleet as laughable relics and joked about how quickly the humans would surrender. The order to fire was given without ceremony, and the first salvo was launched. But instead of crumbling under the assault, the human ships moved with surprising speed and precision, defying their apparent age and design. The laughter aboard the Imperial vessels gave way to confusion and then to panic. The human fleet responded with coordinated maneuvers and devastating firepower. What had seemed like a straightforward operation turned into chaos. The weapons the humans unleashed were far from primitive. They pierced Imperial shields and hulls with terrifying efficiency. One Imperial ship after another erupted in fireballs, and the fleet's cohesion disintegrated. The humans exploited every weakness, dismantling the Empire's forces with surgical precision. Imperial officers, once smug in their superiority, were now paralyzed by the reality of their situation. The humans had transformed their supposed weaknesses into strengths, using deception and strategy to lure the Empire into a devastating trap. The Imperial fleet was systematically obliterated, each loss shattering the myth of the Empire's invincibility. In a desperate move, the Imperial fleet commander opened a direct line of communication with the human leaders, his voice trembling with anger and fear. He demanded answers. How had the humans turned the tides so completely? The response was calm, almost casual. The human commander explained that they had spent years mastering the art of deception. Every encounter, every defeat, had been a lesson. They had built their fleet not for show, but for survival. The ships the Empire dismissed as obsolete were, in fact, advanced vessels designed to exploit imperial arrogance. Humanity had not only prepared for this moment, they had orchestrated it. The Empire's fleet lay in ruins, and its leaders faced an undeniable truth. Humanity had evolved into a formidable force, capable of altering the balance of power in the galaxy. This battle, meant to be a demonstration of imperial dominance, had instead become a lesson in humility. The humans, once underestimated and ridiculed, had claimed their place among the stars, not as prey, but as equals, or perhaps something greater. Words that exposed the Empire's arrogance and short-sightedness. The humans had been playing a long game, and the Empire had fallen right into their trap as the battle raged on. The Empire's fleet began to crumble. The initial confusion turned into total defeat as the human ships targeted key vessels with deadly precision. One by one, the Imperial ships were disabled or destroyed. Their defenses crumbled under the calculated and united attack of the humans. They knew exactly where to strike. Each attack pushed the Empire further into disorganization and chaos. What started as a simple standoff had become a nightmare for the once dominant fleet. The Empire's advanced technology so often proved the pillar of its superiority useless against the ruthless tactics of the humans. The shields failed, the weapon systems broke down, and the once organized fleet became a chaotic mess. The humans had studied the Empire, learned its patterns, and exploited its weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. It was now clear that the Empire had been outmatched from the start, not in numbers or raw power, but in intellect and strategy. Desperation gripped the Empire as its fleet tried to regroup, but every move was anticipated and every strategy countered. The humans had planned this by laying traps within traps, ensuring that no matter what the Empire did, they would always find defeat. Panic spread through the Imperial ranks. Orders and countermarches were issued, but nothing could stop the relentless advance of the human fleet. In a last desperate effort, the Empire attempted to retreat with the hope of saving what was left of their once proud fleet, but the humans had foreseen this too. The escape routes were already blocked, the retreat corridors cut with surgical precision, and the Empire ships, now surrounded, had nowhere to go. The realization was devastating. There would be no escape, no regrouping, no second chance. The Empire, in all its power and glory, was trapped. Trapped in a web woven by a species they once considered insignificant. From a safe distance, the Empire's leadership watched the battle unfold. Their faces reflected a mixture of amazement and disbelief. They had been so certain of their victory, so confident in the superiority of their fleet, that the thought of defeat had never crossed their minds. Now, as they witnessed the systematic destruction of their forces, the full weight of their failure began to sink in. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Ship after ship, each one fell a blow to the pride and power of the Empire. The humans showed no mercy. Their tactics were precise, and their aim lethal. They were dismantling the Empire piece by piece, erasing any hope of recovery. The once mighty pride fleet of the Empire was being torn apart before their very eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. In the final moments of the battle, the remaining Imperial ships, battered and shattered, drifted aimlessly through space. The humans had managed to do what was once thought impossible and had brought the Empire to its knees. The battlefield, now littered with the wreckage of Imperial ships, stood as a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance and underestimation. The Empire's leaders had at first watched with dismay. So much confidence now. They watched in stunned silence as their empire crumbled before them. The humans had not only survived, they had triumphed through deception, strategy, and an unbreakable will to fight. They had achieved what no other species had ever managed to do. The Empire was feared throughout history. The galaxy was in ruins, its fleet decimated, its power broken. The lesson was clear. The galaxy had changed, and the humans once underestimated and discarded were now a force to be reckoned with. The fall of the Empire was complete, and a new era was about to begin. The one in which humanity would emerge from the shadows and claim its place among the stars. The battle was over, but the echoes of its impact would resonate throughout the galaxy for years to come. What remained of the once mighty Imperial fleet slowly returned to its home territories, wounded and shattered, and carrying with them the horrible stories of their defeat. The survivors, tormented by what they had witnessed, spoke of a human fleet that defied all logic, a force that had seemed weak but had attacked with unmatched ferocity. The stories that brought they returned home filled with disbelief and fear, a stark contrast to the arrogance with which they had set out as these tales spread throughout the Empire, igniting a storm of political upheaval. The unshakable confidence of the Empire's leaders was shattered, replaced by a desperate scramble to assign blame. Accusations flew in all directions. How had this been allowed to happen? Who had so badly underestimated the humans? The political elite, once united in their belief in the invincibility of the Empire, now turned against itself. Every faction sought to protect its own interests and deflect responsibility. The reality of the Empire's vulnerability became brutally apparent. For the first time in centuries, they were forced to confront the possibility that they were no longer the supreme power that they had always believed. They had always believed that humans were a species that they had barely considered worthy of attention. They had exposed the flaws in their assumptions and broken their aura of invincibility. The repercussions were immediate and profound. The Empire's control over its vast territories began to weaken, and whispers of rebellion began to spread. And dissent grew in volume across the galaxy. The news of the Empire's defeat at the hands of humanity spread like wildfire. The reaction was a mix of disbelief and a growing sense of wonder. Humanity, once considered a minor player on the galactic stage, was now viewed with a new and worrying respect. The other species that had so long feared the Empire's dominance now looked upon humans with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that perhaps the Empire was not as invincible as it seemed, and fear that humanity, with its newly acquired power, could represent a threat to them as well. For humanity, this victory was more than a battle won. It was a statement to the galaxy. They would no longer be seen as the underdog, the species to be pitted or ignored. They had won their place among the stars not through brute force, but through cunning strategy and a deep understanding of their enemies' weaknesses. The humans had proven that they were not to be underestimated, that they could take on the most powerful forces in the galaxy and emerge victorious in the epilogue of the battle. The human commander reflected on the path that had brought them here. It had not been an easy journey, but it had been necessary. Deception had been their greatest weapon, allowing them to turn the Empire's arrogance into their own trap. The commander meditated on the folly of their enemies, their overconfidence, and the Empire's belief in its own superiority had blinded them to the truth. In contrast, humanity had embraced its underdog status, using it to lull the Empire into a false sense of security before dealing the decisive blow. But the commander also knew that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and although the Empire had been humiliated, it was still a force to be reckoned with. The humans had left their mark, but they would have to remain vigilant. The other powers of the galaxy would be watching. Close some with a newly acquired respect, others with envy or fear. The rise of humanity would not go unnoticed, and the next steps would be crucial in determining their future. As the commander looked at the stars, a sense of resolve settled in his mind. The humans had proven their worth, but they could not allow themselves to rest in their laurels. The battle had been won, but the war for their place in the galaxy was far from over. The commander knew that humanity would need to continue to adapt, learning and growing stronger. The deception that had also been there would continue to be necessary, but now they also had the attention of the galaxy. They would have to balance their newfound power with wisdom and caution. The story for now closed on a note of quiet determination. The Empire had taken a severe blow but was not completely defeated. Humanity had emerged, but its path was not yet complete. The galaxy would once again be a world apart. Ruled by a single dominant power, it had become a place of uncertainty and potential, And as the humans prepared for what lay ahead, they knew that this victory was not the end but simply the beginning of a new era, one they themselves would carve. Your destiny among the stars.